Looking quite shiny and pretty, and we're live.
We are indeed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transformation Tuesday. We have an early edition, and because we have a special guest, and our special guest is Toyin, and Toyin is the author of Hush to Roar. And we asked Toyin on today as we're going to talk about a very sensitive yet super important topic of parenting after sexual abuse. Potential, and we're really talking about child sexual abuse. But I also want to explain that Toyin is in the UK, so it's a little late for her. It's her bedtime. So I really appreciate you. And I don't know if you guys remember, Toyin joined us before in August to talk about the pre-launch of her book. And hello, Elkie. And so today the book is out. The book is launched. It's on Amazon and it's doing phenomenal. She's getting rave reviews, and I am so proud. And I want to congratulate you
Thank you.
on many levels. I want to congratulate you for your courage, for using your voice, for being brave. And then I want to congratulate you for being for getting your accolades that you've been getting. Let me go in Facebook real quick and share. I forgot to do that. I want to share I'm going to share right now to Toyin's page, and I'm going to share to Dee's page. And there goes Dee. I just shared to your page, and then I'm going to share to Toyin's. And this will allow your folks to be able to see this from your page. Hopefully technology works with us, because sometimes technology can be a little tricky. Well, I blame technology, although it's the users. But anyway, so tonight we're going to be talking about a very sensitive subject, and it's an important subject, but it's also a subject that a lot of people shy away from. And since we're in the month of October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month here, I definitely want to encourage us to not only think of it from a perspective of it's the awareness of in October, but like I always said, that's an everyday awareness. And as we talk through this parenting after child sexual abuse, I'm going to hand it over to Toyin to just tell us a little bit about what's been happening with her and her book since she launched.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for having me today. For my second time, I was really pleased when I came. The first time on my birthday, I remember vividly. So yes, the book has launched. It launched on Sunday. It was really successful. Thank you so much for everyone's support. And so yes, nothing much has happened since then to now, but before that, I think a lot happened as soon as I finished writing the book. And I think sometimes when you tell people that you're going to do something, they doubt you. And that was definitely my case, because mine was going to be very heavy. I'd let everyone in, especially my family, because of the sexual abuse involved. But it wasn't quite taken in the way I thought it would be. They just assume, it's just going to be a book that maybe just my best friend will buy it and my neighbor, and then that's it. It will be a hush hush. But they forgot the title of my book.
Yes.
Right. Hush to Roar. So, of course, when I finished writing the book and it came out and people read it and people were crying and like, oh my gosh, how can you do this? How can you do this, family and all sorts, and your community. So it was not as accepted. And to be honest, I'd actually started with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey, one of my best authors, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is begin with the end in mind. And that's exactly what I did. So I always knew that if I didn't have any support, I would walk it alone. So for me, it hasn't been a walk in the park, let's put it that way. So there's been a lot of resistance. Some people have actually said, can I just do away with it, call it all back? I said, I'm not clawing this back. So that's how it's been, and it's been a mixture. I don't know if you were on there on Sunday when I talked about Sarah model. So when I did business analysis, it's like when there's resistance of stakeholders within an organization, they go through different stages. They go through the shock, the anger, resistance, before they get to the acceptance and then healing. So that's a
Yeah.
Sarah. So obviously I'm in my healing and hope level. Not everyone's there with me. So I've
Right.
just got to be patient, and I do get it. That's a big deal. But my children, that's where I focus most of my energy into, because obviously if we're talking about childhood trauma, then we don't want the very trauma that I'm trying to get rid of be what my children will now get.
Yes.
So that's where I focus most of my energy on. And I've been, been talking about it. I'm quite open. They'll ask me. I mean, my son, particularly, he's 18, he's in university. I know that when I told them about it, a few days after, he was asking again about more details. I was just praying don't go too far, but age appropriate as to what I was telling them. But it certainly made me more conscious as a parent. But I can say before the book and before I started healing, that's where I know that the experience I had definitely had an impact on my parenting style, for sure, for sure. I now had to unlearn and relearn as a parent. Um, and that's majorly because of my experience. I was very, especially my daughter, very possessive over her. I didn't want even, her uncles or anyone. I would be like, no, let me have her, don't, I'll bath her, don't, So it's amazing how you don't even know that those things impact you, because you'll be unconsciously doing these things. So for sure, for me, the sexual abuse has a huge impact on how we parent when we grow up. And that's throughout my book. It's I mean, most of the parts in there you'll see where I mention specifically about men that were close to my daughter. It was not very good, and you think as you're growing up, if you're a good person, you'll be a good parent. Not if you've gone through a lot. And I'm not saying that I'm a bad parent, but was I a conscious parent? No, no. In some areas, no.
Thank you so much for that. I just have a comment that just popped in from Elkie. She said, I can relate to that, especially with my daughter. I'm extremely overprotective, especially with men.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing, Elkie. And, there are a couple of things that you said that resonate with me because I also have a daughter. And she's 11 years old. And there's a level of anxiety that came with before birth all the way through now. And I know there's still some levels of it that will happen. And so the reason why I thought this topic was so important is because I saw the need in your book as I was reading it for more intentional, more conscious parenting, and not just from a perspective of an abuse, sexual abuse, but just trauma
Yeah.
situations. Because as I was reading it, I don't know if you remember me messaging you, oh my
Of course.
God. And so every stage of her trauma, I would message her because I felt like I was journeying with you, through from the foster to your move all the way through it. And so there were levels of parenting that needed to be different
Yeah.
throughout your book. That's why I thought this topic and your book is not just about your journey through an abuse of that sort, but your journey through a lot of traumas in your life. I mean, you're still standing, is all I have to say.
Thank you, Stacey.
And
Yes.
that's fantastic. Listen, guys, Hush to Roar is one of those books that if you um, know of, a person who have been through sexual abuse, if you know of people who have had childhood trauma, or if you yourself have been through, or if you're a parent, is just something you have to read. But I want to share something with you because you talked about what you're going through now, that kind of I'm a man on an island, and you actually um, you inspired a quote, because I wake up with quotes and I do quotes, and you inspired a quote of mine that I put out yesterday or the day before, and it was really about, if you don't live all if you're living authentically and speaking your truth, um, is bothering people and they're isolating you, then you know what, it's you and your island that's going to live very happy.
Yeah.
And, there was a friend that was just like, but does anybody really want to live on an island? No, we don't want to live on an island. And we prefer to have our connections. But at the same time, if you've ever been through the traumas of sexual abuse or the intense traumas that Toyin described in her book, you would so understand that quote. It just makes more sense to be on an island dancing and singing to your own beat. What are your thoughts on that?
In fact, you're spot on there, and I think obviously because you've read my book,
Yes.
you're just. I feel like you're in it with me,
Oh, yes.
is
I'm
what I can
so
say.
I'm all in it with you. Yes.
So, and that's exactly, and people don't really get it. Like, okay, I think people actually thought that I wouldn't come out because I've been a loving person. I had a disease to please. I wanted people to love me. I wanted, and that was not genuine, because if I let go, then I realized that people weren't coming towards me. I would still have to reach out again. I'm like, hang about. What is this?
Yes.
So for me, this is me. I feel I can breathe. I still show them love, but then I'm okay. I'm so okay with me. And I think that stems from you looking inside and knowing that you've healed from in out, and know that the God, for me, I mean, I serve God, and I believe that the God has strengthened me from within, and he's with me. And not that I'm saying, just like you said, not that I wouldn't want people, but I don't need. I'm not needy to say that, oh, please. No, because God has given me that strength, and everything I went through, oh my word, for me, this is freedom. And you can't beat freedom, authenticity, just to own your voice. When everyone nudged me from little all the way to adults, even if they had their way now, I'd still be hushed because of the shame they feel I'm bringing. And that's the thing. They say I'm bringing shame.
Yes.
And so it's the shame, like, no, 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 don't talk, you can't. And it's debilitating,
Yes.
seriously, as in physical ailments that I was getting. It's actually to do with your immune system being down regulated, your
Yes.
tummy, all your muscles are tense, and now I love it.
Yes. It's free.
I'm free. Love
Yes.
me. I love you. If you don't love me, I understand. That's okay. And I'll
Yes.
still love you, but this is me. Love me or leave me, because I'm
Yes.
not going back.
Yes. And your book, and that's fantastic. Your book has a cage with a bird coming out of the cage.
Oh,
And one of the reasons why I resonated with that, and I'm going to read a couple excerpt, as you will read a couple excerpt
yeah.
from your book, is because my book, Live Your Truth and Break the Cycle, has a young girl releasing butterflies. And
Yes.
so it is that thing that unless you have truly experienced what many of us have experienced from that type of sexual trauma that has hushed you, that's silenced you from the inside out, and
Mm.
suffocates that you feel tight, you feel suppressed, and it silenced the things that you want to share and how you really want to be out there. And so when people say, don't, you shouldn't, you're causing, it kind of just makes you think, hey, I've been shushed for so long. And now that I'm free, you can't shut me up, you know? So I'm going to read this piece. And this is really important, guys, because a lot of times when the adult being hushed and shushed, we have, the capability and the understanding to say, I am not going to be hushed. But a child who is hushed and they don't have that mental capacity or that mental aptitude to say, oh, I'm still going to speak. Not many of them. And so understanding the parenting dynamics, that's important to allow your children to be heard from a very early age will help us through this type of problem. Right? So what I want to do, I'm going to bend down, is I'm going to read a little excerpt from my book. And I'm using this. My book is Live Your Truth and Break the Cycle. And it has that young girl letting the butterflies out. And I start with a Maya Angelou quote, and this is my introduction. And it says, my mission is not merely to survive, but to thrive. And to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. And that's Maya Angelou. Growing up, we thought that the enemy was the gun violence that plagued the streets of Kingston and the poverty that robbed food from tables. The truth was that secrets were the enemy. This enemy sealed the lips of those who wanted to speak the truth that would have broken down the barriers and cleansed so many from the mind traps created throughout generations. It is no wonder the darkness still exists. The roots run deeper than the 4 layers of the earth. It will require surgical removal of the thoughts on the brain of those who are afraid to utter the truth. The hypocrisy came with the words I was taught as a young girl. These words of the truth shall set you free. And speak the truth. God doesn't like liars. But these people, they kept secrets, not just any secrets, damaging and life-changing secrets. Did they not serve the God that didn't like liars? The web of deception was so thick that it clouded the minds of those who reveled in it and hindered their prosperity. The secrets were mixed with the paint on the walls. They were woven on the linens and the bed sheets. They were planted in the earth that grew the fruit trees. They were the memories of ghostly shadows that haunted my dreams and later became nightmares and vague memories that made me question the actions. It was only with age and wisdom that I was able to see through the facade. So that's part of my introduction. But the part that I thought was most relevant to our conversation that we're having now, secrets that is kept within a family because people are afraid to be shamed and they don't want to mess with the family's name. But in my opinion, what good is that family's name if it's tied up with so much foolishness and such damaging foolishness? So I pass it back over to you to say, what are your thoughts? When I read that, how did that feel for you?
It was just exactly as Douglas just said, wow, powerful. I echo that.
Yes.
And it's amazing how we think so narrow minded. And I say we because just as a humbling way of saying it, but when a stranger does something, say your neighbor, will be quick to want to say, oh, let that one, get the police and everything, or things that are violent that are happening in the world. But when it's your own, you don't see beyond what we should see and how it's damaging to some people within, and how you said the secrets, like the shame, the guilt, and what good is that name anyway? you
Yes.
know so to who are you protecting that name for? It still lies. And if you serve the God that I serve, then I was, as a child, so confused. I just
Yes.
didn't get it. I questioned God because
Yes.
as a child, you're humble, you don't know, and then the people that you entrust with do something. So for me, that was exactly how I feel too. And
Yes.
that's why when people want to still hush me now, like you rightly said, as a child, we don't have the mental, cognitive sort of like awareness to want to say. We've got the freeze and fright and everything that just makes us stay in one spot. But when people say, why are they coming out now?
Yeah.
Well, if this person in that country comes out and that one in that country and several countries that we don't know each other, then there must be some truism into why adults come out when we do,
Yes.
when it comes to the, because people keep asking me why now. I say, am I the only person that, because there must be some cognitive brain functionality that's going on there. It's
Yes.
scientifically proven that we are now in a situation where we are mentally able to process. So exactly what you said.
Yes.
And that's why for me, we have to come out.
Yes. The wisdom, it's, like I said, it's it is with wisdom and maturity and age and the nudge from whichever God you serve, your inner guidance, your spirit guides your God. That's what makes us come out right now. And sometimes when people ask that, I'm going to be honest, it infuriates me. Like
Okay.
how dare you ask that? Have you been through that? Do you know what that feels like to be trapped and feel like a bird in a cage or a butterfly in a jar? Do you have any idea? I'm even getting
Oh,
goosey bumps and they're just raging about that right this second. So it truly does infuriates me when people say that. And I do know that it has a lot to do with a lack of knowledge, and that's why awareness is so important for me, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So I just want to read a few comments and then I'll pass it back over to you. Come out because it is liberating and can help others. Absolutely.
definitely.
Yes. um and then we have Elkie saying hello to Kimberly. Hello, everybody who's joined. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're watching this replay, we're talking with Toyin. She is the author of Hush to Roar, and we're talking about parenting after child sexual abuse and really, really parenting after trauma, because she had many other traumas that affected her. And so we've just talked through secrets. And Dee, is there anything you want to add before we move to the second part of the what we'll ask Toying to do?
Yeah, because I'm not I I haven't had a chance to read your book yet, so don't know all your story, but know that you are in my heart, and I thank you, and a whole lot of people thank you for sharing your story. You and Stacey. Now I was gonna ask you about, what did your son say? How did he feel about?
So it was a very calculated way that I brought this to both my children, actually. I sought for a higher pearl of wisdom because it was the most difficult thing I ever had to do. And he, of course, they were both shocked, and and they got up to me and they just hugged me and said, "Mum, you're so inspirational. We love you. We're so proud of you." And it was at that point as if the bird flew out of the cage. If I could have written it on the cage that this is the time. I'd prayed and I'd read a lot about research into what happens. I'm sure Google will laughing at me like, what is she typing? I wrote all sorts. Do children become traumatized when you tell them all sorts into the search? And I had a lot of positive things come out, and it gave me that, it empowered me. And I just prayed to God to give me wisdom. And He was really, I mean, He asked me questions like a week, like every day, little bit by bit. And He would look at me and I'll say, and when you look empowered and you're not looking like a victim, that is the
Yes.
best way. You can't still be looking low, weak. No. So they know that their mum is not in a weak place. They know how I am. They know what I've done, all my education, how as I studied as an adult, and they know how I've been. So it was empowering to them to say, wow, so now that I think they now understand me. And I think for me, that was key. Like all those weird things that my daughter would say, Mom, you're such a mum. That's how my daughter would say, Mom, you are too much like a mum. I'm like, what's that? So the possessiveness. So now for me, it makes them know me. I want my children to know me. But
Yes.
all these years they hadn't. So it's only just just in fact early this year that they've only, I believe, they've just like known me. And it's drawn us closer. It's amazing. It's
That's
amazing.
fantastic. So, Dee, anything else?
Thank you. Oh yeah, for each, I want to ask both of y'all because okay, this is the question for each one of y'all to take a chance. What advice would you give parents to? Well, what signs would you give your parents to look for kids
Okay.
that family, because we know that, and yeah, the family aspect, because a lot of people don't know what to look for if something's going on.
Okay. So I want to
Stacey, you
give a
want to go first?
few. Yeah, I'll give a few and then I'll pass it over to Toyin. So it's really important because you can't really, it's not the mood of the child per se, because it's when the child is outside of the household that most of the times they will be reaching out, um or hoping that somebody will just see it on their forehead. It's kind of like, um we want to never be home, and if we're in a place where we feel really comfortable, we would stay there for the rest of our lives. When your parents have to come and get you or call you to come home, um and you don't want to go, there's a possibility that there's something going on at home. But you can also watch the mood of the child. For me, right now, I'm always a happy-go-lucky adult. I'm happy all the time. When I was a younger child, my face always had a look on it. It was always a very introspective, sad look. And it took me a while to lose that face. But I never had anybody, and then I laughed a lot as I I laughed a lot because I used that laughter to kind of mask it, because what I was going through was so painful and it was so confusing, because I really didn't know it was trauma. I didn't know what the heck trauma was, but it was confusing. And so I had to laugh a lot, and I did a lot of laughter. But there's a lot of things that you have to pay attention to. But most important thing I can ever say, because it's going to be different for every child. Just ask the freaking questions, for God's sakes. I'm sorry, I get really passionate, so y'all have to forgive me. Ask the question. Don't wait for a child to give you a sign to find out if their well-being is good. Ask the question. Let be the person to ask them, because they're waiting. And Toyin, I'm going to pass that over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Dee, so for me, I echo again everything that Stacey says. Like, I'm like, what? That's exactly it. So, like I said on the launch day, that we're not in a corner with our knees up to our chest and holding their shaking. Like it's almost like that's how every child is when they're abused. Then look for those children that are in a corner. No, I was the life of the party because one, I was happy that I was not at home. So I was always happy and like I was always smiling. I was always, but then when it was time to go home, then you'd see a drawn face. And my best friend's mom, then I used to say, "Can I just sleep here? Can you call home?" And she'll say, "Oh, no, no, no." And like you said, now I'm just thinking, we should just ask questions, more questions, because I remember then I just said, "No, I don't want to." I don't, I'm like you said, I always thought they should know, and I got even angry that people didn't know, even though I didn't say anything, and I actually hid it well. I still expected adults to know. So it's like catching those signs. If you're very attentive, you will catch the signs. But then there's also the runaway, because I mean, just giving a little bit away, but I ran away from home. I,
Yeah.
I did. And that's not my character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not me. So those little signs, like runaway kids, why are they running away? I
Yeah.
ran away. I didn't even care. I just, and other things, like when people are talking as a family, that we're all gathered as a family gathering, sometimes I'll just get up and storm out. I just did very irrational things, like we're not normal. So if they're all laughing and I see the person who's done something to me also laughing and everyone's laughing with that person, I get very angry. Like, why are you laughing with this person that's been so horrible and two-faced and a hypocritic, very hypocrite, and I would, get angry, and I just get up and say, no, it's fine. So all those little things that are unusual, that's the things I would say we have to look out for. And if a child says they don't want to go, like if it's like an uncle's house or to church or to an activity, and they keep saying no, 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 we have to be attentive, not force them to say, come on, just get up, we're late. We can't let the world and life just let us run by. We have to be attentive.
Yes. So Elke says, I love reading the comments because I love the engagement. I think when the child does not want to be around with or around a certain person, no matter who, there's usually a reason. We need to pay close attention to that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and then Elke also said, yes, good point, Toyin, a child that tends to run away because they're running away from something.
Yeah.
And the acting out is the only thing they know because remember, guys, they're little people, but their maturity is not there yet. And then the fear of and the guilt and the shame and whatever else might have caused a child not to speak out um, sometimes is because they have no idea that what they're going through is completely wrong
Yeah.
because you're a child and you don't really start to see the severity of it. I know for me, I was in my 20-ish. I think I was right end of college, maybe first year out of college, 22, 23, when the severity of it hit me like a ton of bricks and my depression truly started, or what I then knew to be depression, because apparently I've been depressed all my life but did not recognize it until I got to about 22, 23, when something else triggered the emotions in me. And then I was like, well, holy crap. And then I was like, well, that wasn't right. And then I was like, oh my gosh, am I broken? And then all of a sudden, and then I would say there's something wrong with that. But think about a child that's younger than 22, 23, that is going through these things and having their nervous system going to these shocks over and over again and not freaking knowing what that is, but knowing that there's something about it that's just not right.
Hmm.
That's why it's so important we pay attention. And that's why it's so important that we build the awareness on every angle. It is just not okay to hush, to
Oh,
secret, to silence at all.
at all.
Dee, did you have a comment? So Elke says, exactly. A child's mind, most of the time, just cannot process that form of abuse. It's terrifying and very confusing. Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's another thing. So I have, do you have a passage you want to read for us? So Toyin is going to read an excerpt from her book for us. And then I have another one on forgiveness, and I'd love to hear.
Okay. Okay, right. So this bit here that I'm going to read is actually reading to healing. So I had to do a lot of reading to heal as a part of my research, because just like you, Stacey, in my 20s, that's when it all came to me. I don't know why that's when it came to me too. So I'm just going to look for a bit here. So here I'll say the problem I had was that I hadn't dealt with my feelings at that point because I didn't know how to. If I'm honest, I didn't think I had a problem. I just knew I was hurting badly. The earlier experiences of leaving my foster family and then leaving another and moving again from a different family were just traumatic events that I couldn't comprehend. My pain body continued throughout my adult life. I didn't realize that I was exhibiting my inner feelings. I had no idea. Those around me knew that there were times when I was erratic in my behavior. As my children got older, particularly my daughter, I noticed that I was overly protective of her, even then when there was no apparent danger or threat to her. Others would say I was paranoid. Her dad dotes on her, and is the most loving father to both of our children. He would never hurt them. I remember always saying that I would bathe her or dress her when she was a baby, or if her uncle wanted to dress her up. My inability to trust often caused friction between my husband and I. I had to learn to relax a bit more and be more trusting. I was extremely thorough in all my dealings with both my children. At my children's nursery, I used a red book for both of my kids. I'd record everything that they did at night, before and after. I'd record everything. If they had a cold, what they ate, what their habits were, and all sorts. When mothers and fathers queued up in the morning to speak to the nursery manager before they dropped their kids off and dashed to work, I simply handed over my red book. I knew they'd never remember everything every parent said in the morning. In the evening, I would pick up my kids, and the nursery assistant would have written in the book what my kids got up to. We had a system going, although sometimes they thought I was a little on the crazy side. I'm sure.
That's funny. That's awesome. That's awesome. But here's the thing about that. Because of what we've been through, you have to be a little crazy. I'm sorry. Or whatever people want to call it. And I always tell people who used to say I'm a little overprotective parent, and I would say there is no such thing, because the moment you step away from protecting your child, any and everything can happen. The moment you're Because a part of being a protective parent is a survival thing too, right? Because, like I
Yes.
always tell people, you carry your traumas in your nervous system. And as a parent, every stage of my daughter's life triggered my trauma. Think about that, guys. Because I would start thinking, oh my gosh, when I was this age, this happened. Oh my God. And when I was this age. And so it is a continuous thing. I still have 2 more years of that. What I mean by that is my trauma, my sexual abuse trauma ended, I think I might have been 12. That's what I'm thinking. 12, or yeah, maybe 12 or
Wow.
12 and a half. And so my daughter is 11. And every day I celebrate when I look at her. Every day I celebrate that
Yeah.
between 0 and 11, OMG. She's good. It's a celebration for me, and I'm getting riled up again because we shouldn't have to fricking celebrate that. That's ridiculous. But because of the society that we live in, because people won't speak out and allow others to speak out, because people are ashamed of this topic, because people keep ridiculing people and asking them stupid questions like, why are you just speaking out? Because of those things, we have to celebrate each year and each step when our own children are not freaking sexually abused. That's freaking ridiculous. Yes, I said it. It's ridiculous.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, my
It
cousin on the
is.
launch, yeah, she
Yeah.
said, "Oh, this is it's a journey that it's not ended, you know." And I know it's a battle, but it's ridiculous that I have to keep saying that I want to come out, and you're still telling me that no. And like you said, it's with me and my daughter. Oh, it's yeah, just
Yes.
it's
Yes.
exactly it's the same every year. I'm like, okay, we've gone past that. Okay, that's cool. And it's I don't know. Everything you're saying mirrors exactly. It's amazing how our brains
It
work
is.
like that.
It is. I mean, and I know you'll be reading my book, and when you do, you're going to be amazed. When I read yours, I was like, holy crap, are we like one and the same or what?
I can't
Um,
wait.
it really was. And when I read Toyin's book, I cried when she cried. A few of the times I had to cry inside because my daughter was looking right at me. But I cried when she cried. I laughed when she laughed. And when she felt empowered, I felt empowered. And when she revealed, I thought I was going to die. I couldn't believe it. It was just because I could relate to that. And so when you find a person who have been through something like that and they are sharing and they're trying to help others and they're being passionate about it, either you join in and help and support, or you just go away. I don't have a better way to
Yeah.
say it, because it's so important, guys. It's so important. What shame is it bringing to another person for me to say that I was violated? I think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. What shame is it bringing you for me to say that I was violated? None. I think
No.
it's ridiculous. I think it's egotistical, and I think people should stop it. Because if we don't, we are creating another generation of children who are going to. We're not breaking the cycle. We're leaving it up for another generation to be hurt, to be abused, to be scarred. We have to stop. And the best way to stop is to allow people like
Right.
Toyin and myself and whoever else is out there to speak their truth without being judged and without being ridiculed and without being shamed, because I feel
Right.
no shame. Not only don't I feel shame, I get quite agitated.
So Stacey, so I
Just
don't
a little
even
bit.
get I don't get agitated at the moment, but
Yes.
but I feel you.
Yes. So Elkie says, I can relate to feeling paranoid sometimes and being super overprotective. Continue to do your work as a mom, Elkie. There's nothing wrong with that. And then we have Moraine says, I did not want to have daughters because I wasn't healed, and I was scared that I would be too paranoid. And you know what? The overvigilance happens with sons too, just so you know. But I understand. I understand that. And then Elkie says, I felt the same way while reading your book too, Stacey. I also felt as if you were right next to me sharing your story. Oh, thank you, Elkie. Then we have Kimberly said, thank you. Moraine says, unashamed. Absolutely. And Sophie said, you should not be ridiculed for speaking your truth. That is so true, because we need people. The whole premise here is, I'm assuming, I'll say it for me and then I'll let Toyin speak, is to break the cycle. When you speak it out, especially when you're a parent, you feel like you've removed some sort of doom or gloom that hovers over your children. And so that's why speaking it was important to me. I always tell people, my book is dedicated to my daughter. I wrote to speak for, so that the legacy can be different, so the destruction and the corrosion can go away, and that I can build more of a constructive legacy for my children. And so in speaking it, when I say it out loud, it's like saying to the ghost of the abuse past to get gone. And so if I speak it out and I alert the universe that I am no longer accepting that, that means I remove it from my children, y'all. You understand?
There you go.
So don't. That's how I feel, and that's how I'll always feel. I'm very passionate about this.
I love you, Stacey.
I love you, Toyin.
Oh dear. That is exactly
Okay,
me.
before you go ahead,
Yeah.
Say that again.
go ahead, Toya, and then I'll read. Derek had a question. Derek
Okay.
has a question.
You can read Derek's question. That's fine.
Let me read it, or you want to read it? Okay.
Okay.
Derek said, "How do you balance being overprotective and enabling your child's independence during their formative years?"
That's a very good question. And overprotective and deliberating, and that word I'm looking for, where you're doing everything for them, you're hovering them, you're keeping them inside. That's an awesome question. There is a very thin balance, and trauma responses can do the enabling. And so that's why women and men alike, we have to work on ourselves constantly to make sure that when we are being overprotective or protective, that we're not doing it from our trauma response. If we do it from our trauma response, Derek, yes, we're going to do all of that. We're going to enable and we're going to do all of that. But once we learn how to come from a space where we're just trying to keep them safe and we're trying to teach them, and you give them a rope, give them the yard, the inch, and then you still teach them. You have to teach them by speaking out, teach them what it is to set boundaries, teach them what it is to feel violated. And so it's not that you hide them in a closet or you hide them at home, but you use your voice to make them independent, if that makes sense. And the only way to do that is to not come from a trauma response. Because if I come from a trauma response, it can be really weird, and it can definitely get to that point that you're speaking of. Your thoughts, Toyin?
Yeah, that's exactly. I echo that, and I'll also say, when we are coming from an angle of trauma based, it's actually everything about us, and it's not the child. So we are trying to protect them, but we're doing it from that sore place. So we have to heal. In fact, most of the time when we're lashing out at the child and everything, we have to look at ourselves actually. That is this about the child? Is it about something that I've not dealt with? So we have to really heal. And that's why I talk about endlessly conscious parenting, awakened. We have to awaken. But how do we do that? Heal first.
Yes.
Before, that's why I said being a good parent and love it. There's two different things. If you're a good person, but if you're traumatized, you might actually end up not being a conscious parent and bring up your child the way you're meant to. So I know I had to heal first, and I knew that I was already like yourself. I needed to open my mouth because I was watching a lot of things that children, it was like a generational curse. I'll say that someone who was sexually abused and then they abused the child. And I said, there's no way. I don't know if you've heard that, but sometimes a woman will be abused and then that child would be abused. And then it would, at least I've seen 3 generations like that, where it's just been on. And I'm just like, is that negative energy? Is that because when you are in a certain way, you think you're looking for love, but it's how you are. That's what you attract to you.
Yes.
And you think that you're attracting that person. Sometimes you can get exactly the same person that abused you into your life. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Because that's what you're showing to the
That makes
universe, even
sense.
though
Yeah.
you're thinking that that's not what you're doing. That's what you're doing.
That
Because
makes
when
perfect sense.
so I'm broken, and you go into brokenness because you want So from an angle of looking after your child, it's still an angle of we feel afraid for them, so we end up controlling them,
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
and it's
It
damaging.
is.
Yep.
It
It's
is. It is
damaging.
very. I'm sorry. You said it's damaging. Yes, it's all about healing first, guys. And but guess what though? Healing first means you. I was never going to have a child. I said I'm not bringing a child into this rough world. That's what I said, and then I ended up doing it anyway because at the end of the day, I started digging through the layers, and then I started elevating and healing and feeling better about myself. And then I started seeing that I was capable, and then I started seeing that, oh my gosh, I could reverse this. Oh my god, so where Moraine didn't want a girl, I did, because I told the universe that I'm going to have a daughter and I'm going to reverse this, because that's how we do. We try to
Mhm.
prove everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point to that is
Yeah.
I wasn't completely healed when I had my child. And because of that, it threw me into postpartum depression because I didn't know how I was going to protect her from this
Wow.
ugly, ugly world. So it's not about that we're going to be completely healed, but if we can continue to work on ourselves and acknowledge when we're doing trauma responses versus coming from a place of being protective, that it's completely different. Protecting your child and teaching them versus trauma response, it looks completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So we
agree.
have we have some great comments. Yes, I agree. I'm the oldest of 5 girls, and I'm a great sister. I was in an unhealthy marriage, and that was also contributing to negative thoughts because she said she never wanted a daughter. But at the end of the day, man, you'd be surprised. Thank you. We are awakening. Thank you, Derek. And then this is a great discussion. We have nestled levels of trauma. Yes, nested levels of trauma, nested in our nervous system, and
Yeah.
simple things can
Yes.
trigger it.
Mhm.
So I really, really, really appreciate Kimberly Thompson. Did Stacey answer? Yes, because Kimberly was asking about, how do you protect
Yeah.
your kids without being, a stalker mom or dad, so to speak. And so it's really about coming from a healing place versus your trauma-based place. So what I want to do, because one of the things that we talk a lot about is forgiveness.
Mhm.
And I have a little excerpt in my book on forgiveness that I want to read. And then I want to ask Toyin, because I know it's almost midnight in your world and we're being really mean to you by keeping you up.
That's okay. I'm enjoying it. I'm awake now.
You're awake. Oh, yes, because I got all feisty. It's because I got all feisty. And so I woke you up. But from my book, what I want to read is this little piece about forgiveness, because a lot of times we talk about we forgive our abusers or we forgive. And the question that I have for everyone who's out here, do you really know what that means? Do you really know what forgiveness means? So I was taking an online training created by Darkness to Light organization, Stewards of Children. And it was during this training that one of the survivors stated that she heard her pastor preach about forgiveness, and it changed her thinking about her sexual abuse. He said that not forgiven is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That was such a powerful statement with a wealth of meaning. It was that statement that made me realize that when I said I forgive you to my abuser, it was a release of poison from my soul. My heart felt like
Wow.
it was beating differently, and my work to help others heal and overcome consciously began. Forgiveness is not an easy thing, but it is a necessary thing. I realized that I gave a lot of thought to my abusers prior to me reaching out and saying the words, I forgive you. I thought that once I released that negative energy from my heart, I would be a better wife, a better mom, and have more insight to help others. Through my journey, I shared my story with those who needed to hear it. I would share about me confronting my abusers, there's an S on that, and that I forgave them. But it was not that easy. Forgiven is an easy word to say. It sounds nice and responsible. We say it sometimes without a true understanding of what it means. There are entire books on forgiveness. When I told my relative that I forgave him, I had no idea what those words meant. The words were orchestrated by my desperate need to move on with my life and be well. What does it really mean to forgive? We often say we forgive, but still carry around deep resentment. Then we didn't truly forgive. I knew that forgiving him would not erase the memories of what he did. I knew that it would not truly change my hypersensitivity to the subject of sexual abuse. So, what was it for? And how could I truly forgive? And there's more to my forgiveness chapter, but I wanted to share that because um, truly forgiveness is something that we have to start with ourselves. And then I'm going to pass that over to Toyin. What are your thoughts on forgiveness, Toyin?
For me, forgiveness, it does not come easy. It was the last thing I did when on my healing journey. Forgiveness was the absolute last thing. Self care was number one. But then before I got to forgiveness, it was back and forth for me. So I'd forgive. I think I would forgive, but I forgave intellectually. And what do I mean? By saying, I just need to forgive so that my life can be okay. I wasn't forgiving the person as a human being. I was forgiving just out of just saying forgiveness, but it's not easy. And I realized that because I would say I've forgiven, and anything that would trigger, it will come back, and I would just dislike the person like anything. And I thought, "Toy, I thought you'd forgiven. No, you hadn't." So it was not until as you read in my book, as I put it in there, that I thought I forgave. But when I did this, then I realized I actually hadn't. And for me, I had to go deep. For me, forgiveness was actually get into the empathy way, to have compassion by actually, for me, was reaching very deep into their own childhood, for me to see if there was any little bit of reasoning behind what they did. That was just important to me. I just needed to get into their world and to see their childhood. And when I actually got into their world a little bit, I could see I had a bit of compassion, which was, I almost felt guilty that I had compassion. Like, what? But then that's when I knew that I was reaching that forgiveness angle. And I know not everyone can do that because some perpetrators have passed. But what I did do, as I said, I researched and read, and I prayed. And when I realized that we all have a bit of pain body, Eckhart Tolle, his book, It Changed My World, to say we have to believe that it's one aspect of them that has done that to us. I know sometimes it's difficult to find a loving aspect from anyone, but I had to believe that it wasn't their whole personality that did that, it was their sub personality. And I had to understand that they too, as God said, we forgive unconditionally with everyone. And I believe that it was just an aspect to them. And when I got into their mind, or when I tried to understand the reasoning, I had empathy. So for me, that was the only time that I could really say, oh, okay, there's something. But I didn't give any excuses for their action. But I then realized that there was nothing, they could give me nothing. They could say, no, sorry, that would make it better. They don't have the power for us to even to forgive. Even if they say sorry, it's like if someone has killed a child and they say sorry to you, they don't have it in them for you to heal that hurt. We're the only ones that have it. So to be fair, we're the only ones that can get to that far place within us, and to say, you know what, there's nothing within them that can make us be any, to can hurt anymore. But as I said, it was back and forth,
Yeah.
years and years and years,
Oh, yes.
for me to know that, you know what, there's nothing left for me to hold against this person. There's
Yes.
absolutely nothing, especially when I was seeking an apology that wasn't quite coming quickly enough. I
Yes.
thought, okay, we're not winning here, are we? And
Yes.
it was their ego. And when you understand that people's ego would always be there, You
Yeah.
have to come from an angle of more intelligence, but not wisdom. Wisdom from God.
Thank you so much for that. So there's a couple I've learned some things about forgiveness. As you did, I read a lot. My 20s was spent reading, and I wrote about that in my book. I was reading all sorts of self-help books and anything that would help me to, yes, we're much alike. Anything that would help me. And so there is a section in my book called Bond of Healing, and I talk about reading and doing that stuff. And so but one of the things that I recently learned about forgiveness is that if we get to the transformational forgiveness, where it's the forgiveness is for us. The forgiveness is so that we can live healthy lives. The forgiveness is so we could be better parents and better wives and better friends. Then it almost
Yes.
negates the fact that we need to even deal with our abusers in the first place. But it's just human nature to want that apology.
Mm.
Dee, do you have a comment?
No, I was going to ask when you said about the apology. Did either one of y'all get an apology from your abusers? And did it? I mean,
No.
no. Okay.
No, even
Okay.
though I had conversations.
Toyin. Okay.
No. So I had conversations as well. They just said, you move on, and
Hmm.
I'm glad you've
Yeah.
moved on now.
What?
No.
Oops, sorry.
Yes. Oh, don't be sorry. This is a safe place. You
It's a
can you
safe
can get
place.
riled up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to even move past that and look at it from their angle of weakness, their powerlessness. So I got to an angle, just like you said, that when if I want to be a better person, then the healing was for me, the
Yes.
forgiveness was for me, and I just had to
Yeah.
understand that they didn't have the power, that they didn't act out of powerful actions. They were powerless. And when
Yeah.
people do what they do like that, they don't have power. They want to
No.
impose that what they feel is power on. So, and I just moved on, and I'm
Yeah.
happy. And I forget. I only can show compassion and love to the person, but I bear no grudge, because when you still hold on to your past, you can't be creative for your future. And
No.
I am very creative, and I just my future is brighter than my past, and my neurons
That was
firing
powerful.
firing and wiring new neurons, and I'm grateful for that.
My future is brighter than my past.
Oh,
Absolutely. I'm typing that. My future is bright
Yeah.
because it is. And I put something on I put something the other day. It's a rear view mirror and then a mirror looking when looking forward in a car in a rear view. And yes, we can look in the rear view occasionally to make sure that we're not repeating past mistakes, but for God's sakes, don't stay there, because if we stay there, we're going to continue to bring up those things that's sitting inside of our nervous system, and it will rule our lives. It will just turn into this spiral,
yeah,
right? So I
yeah,
love that. Let me put it up so everybody could see. Toyin said, my future is brighter than my past. And so that is, I mean, what a freaking powerful statement. And it just is. It just is. Here's the thing, guys, as we talk about sexual abuse, I started talking about this for a few years on social media, where I created a group and I would put it up occasionally, and I would say I was sexual abused, and I would have a few friends that would be like, "Oh my God, you're so brave," and I'm like, "You haven't seen nothing yet," because I feel like I have so much more to give to this cause. And so it built and built and built until it's where I am today. Um,
yeah,
but we all have a responsibility to protect our children,
yeah,
the children that we work around, the children that
Yeah.
everybody is everybody is repeating your thing. My future is brighter than my past. Hey, you better go ahead, girl. They love it. It is. And so what I'm asking for you guys to do, and then I'm going to ask Toyin to kind of wrap us up and share her words, is really to be aware, stay vigilant. Um, be that one caregiver that really cares. Be that person that see beyond the attitude of the child. Be that person that see beyond the bad behavior. It is so important. And as we do, and okay, so let's move to the adult. Be that person that's not judgmental.
Yeah.
Be that person that allows the person to just be. That is so important,
Yeah.
because if we can do that
Just
and we
be, yes.
continue to support, then guess what we're doing? We're changing legacies, we're breaking cycles, we're breaking silence, and that's really important. So I'm going to ask Toyin to just share her last words with us about this topic. We're so happy you joined us. And everybody, Hush to Roar is her book. It's out there for you to purchase on Kindle, and
Amazon. Yeah.
yes,
Paperback as well. Yeah.
paperback.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to mirror what you said as well, we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And that's exactly it. So if we're talking about forgiveness and we're talking about the child, and we're saying that child is doing is being obstructive. Now remember, when we were little, we have to be patient. We have to think, why is that child? And that's all to do with being aware. The awareness has to be up there. We have to be conscious. We have to step back and say, hang on, where am I acting from? An angle of love, an angle of fear. So there are only those two, in my opinion. It's either you're acting out of fear or you're acting out of love. And you might be a loving
Mm.
parent, but you might be a fearful parent. And that translates into just fear. So we have to be conscious. We have to be more compassionate towards children, but also to ourselves as adults. Because if I don't share my story, you don't know me. You won't understand me. When I was little, no one got me. No one, and we have to share our story so that we understand one another, but we can be a more compassionate society. I'd just like to say one little bit from my book. Is that okay? Have you got
Yes,
time for that? I know
yes.
it's an hour. So just a little bit
Yes.
here is it's the child, so this is just the childhood of a perpetrator, but I'm not going into it. It's just to say how people treat us is their karma. How we react is ours. So that's that cyclical
Mm.
thing. So if we say that they've done that to us and now we give that back to them, then it's cyclical karma.
Yes.
So the empathy, the love that I must show
Wow.
to be free of an imprisoned mind and body is the same love that I feel for those who are undergoing what I endured. It's that empathy, the compassion that I feel when I hear of girls, women, mothers, boys, and men who commit suicide due to sexual abuse that they endured for so long. Compassion is the universal love, a universal love language and underlying energy that keeps showing itself to me despite my best efforts to resist it. I've held it out because it hurts too much when I hear of others who are going through what I did, and I often felt helpless for them, partly due to the cultural beliefs I explained earlier. Resisting, however, caused severe cognitive dissonance for me. So that's where my character, being an open person, almost an extrovert, but I never went there. And that was an imbalance of my character and how people wanted me to be. And I couldn't be that. I had to be me and have compassion and forgive. I can do both. So it's not either or. You can forgive, but you also want that to eradicate that in the world. And that's why it's an and forgiveness, but still trying to eradicate this cyclical generational curse that will go on. So
Perfect.
I've loved being here, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so for me, it's, yeah,
So
karma.
thank you so much, Elkie. Says thank you so very much for sharing your story. I cannot wait to read your book. Many blessings and love.
Thank
And
you, Elkie.
we have our responsibility to share our stories. Our stories do not belong to us, and I just want to hats off to you. When I run into sisters like yourself, I have a sister on the live, Moraine. She just says, my heart breaks for those who have committed suicide due to sexual abuse. She also wrote her story. And when I meet women and men who share their stories to heal the world, it just gives me great pleasure to be in your company, because I know that our work is so important. And I will dance on the island with you, my sister. You
Thank
don't
you.
have to be isolated. I will join you. Okay. So
You
thank
hang
you
on a couple
so
minutes.
much. I know
Yeah.
that it's about a few minutes to midnight, and it's your nighttime, like sleep time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody on Facebook. Thank you for I love. Thank you Moraine. Thank you Elkie. Thank you Derek. Thank you. I know we have some other folks. Let's see. Yes, her book is on Amazon. Somebody just asked if the book was on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hush.
it is.
Yeah.
And Moraine says me too, meaning she'll join you on the island. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that will join us on the island. So she said she want to dance on that island. So we have people like Elkie, Moraine, we had Sophie, we have Kimberly. Thank you, everybody. If I didn't call your name, Derek, thanks for being here. This is a very
Juanita.
topic. Juanita, thank you so much. Very important topic. Let's continue it. Let's not just end it tonight. Let's not just end it in October. Let's protect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. I'm ending the
Bye.
broadcast. Good
Yeah.
night, Toyin.
Good night. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.